I've just been reading a philosophy magazine from 2009, and as I read, my mind starts to hurt with so many ideas, which is almost the intention of a magazine. My mother picked it up for me from a book sale because it was entitled Philosophy Now, Comics and Philosophy Issue. And I grabbed so many of them that I figured, yes, I should learn more about philosophy. This is just all Astonishing X-Men by Joss Whedon and eventually Warren Ellis. And I continue on down the line. Sandman's more Garth Ennis' Preacher that I'm eventually going to read. So I decided I'm going to read this philosophy, and I got through some of them and I thought, that's not exactly the genre of comics in which I identify. And Sandman was brought up a couple of times, though not in the in-depth way that I would have preferred. Instead, American Splendor was mentioned, and while that sounds like an admirable attempt, it also sounds like a narcissistic thing to do, to write a comic based on your own life. It feels surrealistic in some ways, and apparently this young person, or middle-aged person in Cleveland decided he was going to write a comic based on his life, and he released it as a yearly thing. And had short stories, very honest about his life. And people somehow bought it, and the author of the article had visited him and talked to him. Never was featured in the comic, though. Too bad. Got married 3 times. He was commenting on his life as a clerk in a Cleveland hospital. I thought, no, that's not exactly what I go for when I read comics, but there shows that there's a genre for everyone. No. Today was about the meaning of life and what it engenders for people. There's so many wonderful philosophers back in the day, but the problem of history is the need to learn it and how it shapes the individual. Because once you learn something, it kind of provides a framework for you how to think. And I know that humanity, on their own, gets rather naive and ignorant, and sometimes tends to stupidity and laziness. But also, without a framework to follow, sometimes I think that people create their own. So when you're teaching all of these wonderful philosophers back in the day and how they read up on each other and disagreed and created their own, there comes a point at which I wonder whether there will be any new philosophy when you have so much foundation upon which you have to build and train the individual to understand the import of what they're doing. For by the time you get through John Paul Sartre's existentialism, by the time you get to Plato's unification of things, the idea, the forms of a table, the idea of a table, the picture of a table, it's not a table. You have the idea, which is the purest form. You have the actual carpenter building the actual table. Now that's a second form. Now you have a third form of the person painting the picture of the table. But that's only a third form. It's purest, and it gets gradually diluted through time. And then so many different philosophers with so many different thoughts, and some of them are so voluminous that they don't even understand themselves, let alone each other. But it's problematic for me, because I wonder whether we're just trapped by our own identities, by our own thoughts, by what we can conceive. Sometimes I wonder whether originality is possible at all in this day and age, as history creates less and less of a window for which to hit a bullseye of making a mark in the world. Or we're just going to become famous for very small things, for mediocrity, for very small attempts and small deviations from the norm. It just troubles me, thinking about all the things that we have to learn. I am not adverse to learning them, but all the processes that build up before a revolution must happen. We must learn anew, start from nothing, and create our own world. That's all I'm thinking about.